Hello, everyone. Welcome to the, do we have everyone? I can't hear you.
We don't have quorum yet, Eugene, so we were.
Okay, all right.
Federica.
Did you start or?
Now, okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is the, oh my God, December 10th, time flies, 2025 meeting of the Community Board 2 Manhattan's Land Use and Housing Committee. We have quorum now, so we are beginning. We have one item on the agenda.
Could we actually, before we begin, could we go ahead and have everyone from the committee introduce themselves as we go around the table?
Yes, that was what I was going to do now. We have one item on the agenda, 5 West 13th Street, AKA 812 West 14th Street. Discussion concerning recent zoning changes and their effect on the new construction project plan for the site, including a presentation by George James, who is here. My name is Katie Bordenaro. I'm vice chair of the committee. And
Sean Sweeney. Arturo Fernandez, committee member.
Donna Raftery, committee member.
Anita Brandt, board member.
Susan Wittenberg, committee member, board member. Committee member.
Frederica Committee.
Yeah.
committee member and online committee members.
That's true.
Okay, so my name is Eugene Yu. I am chair of the Land Use and Housing Committee. We also have some others online, if they could introduce themselves.
It's Carter. I'm just walking down the hallway. You guys know me.
I think that's it from our committee.
That's from our committee. Yes, that's who we expect from our committee.
Great. So if we could move ahead with the first agenda item. George, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Oh, I'm very pleased to be here. I will share my screen if that's okay. All right. Okay, with your permission, I'll get going.
Great.
Okay, so just so for everybody's information, you may have heard, is that in September, my office filed a zoning challenge for the building that was proposed, that is proposed on 5 West 13th Street. And for those who are unaware what a zoning challenge is that there is this 45-day period after the Department of Buildings gives gives any building an approval, a zoning approval, that it can be challenged by any member of the public. And it's not that it's a bad building or a good building. It's that the challenge is whether it's legal under zoning or not. So it's a very high bar. It's essentially you're saying, Department of Buildings, you've made a mistake in your interpretation of the zoning resolution, and these are the issues. So that's what a zoning challenge is. And so we challenged 3 items about this building. The first one is that the building form does not comply with the new City of Yes zoning changes. The second one was that the building has too much floor area according to zoning. And then we complained about the ZD1 having some very basic errors like numbers not summing. I'm going to talk today with this committee about the first one. The building form does not comply with the new City of Yes zoning changes because it's very relevant to this committee, because in June 2024, this committee discussed how this site might be developed under the City of Yes. And I've cribbed the following 6 slides from that meeting. And we're going to go over what we talked about in June of 2024 and how it's relevant to this site. Okay, so first we started with the site, which is this 18,000 square foot site in a C62 district, which is not a historic district, not a special purpose district, and what might happen today versus what might happen under City of Yes regulations. Again, this was what we discussed in June of 2024. And so in June of 2024, we said that currently this district permits either a quality housing building or a height factor building like this one. This is the height factor building, which is reasonably maximizing the height. This is similar to what the applicant has proposed today. And we said that was something that could be done with the zoning at the time. Optionally, the developer can do a quality housing building, which is what we're showing here. And, the quality housing building is shorter, but it's actually larger, meaning it has more floor area in it. It just covers much more of the lot. The City of Yes, we said, would permit the quality housing building. And we said at the time that the City of Yes would permit this building that we're showing here using the universal affordability preference, which would allow the building to be 20% larger with 20% affordable housing. We said that height factor buildings are still possible under City of Yes, but the street wall requirements of 35-631 would eliminate it as a viable option. City of Yes discourages the use of height factor buildings on a site like this and would make a very tall height factor building impossible because of the street wall requirement. Now, it was a very long meeting. We had a lot on the agenda, and we didn't get into the details of that. And so I'm going to get into the details now. So what are those street wall requirements that would affect this building? Well, for the 14th Street side, I'm going to read the zoning because it is English and we can all understand it. The street wall shall be located on the street line and extend along the entire street frontage of the zoning lot up to at least the minimum base height, which here is 60 feet, or the height of the building, whichever is less. And on the 13th Street side, it says at least 70% of the aggregate width of the street wall shall be located within 8 feet of the street line and shall extend at least the minimum base height of 60 feet, or the height of the building, whichever is less. Now, this is a massing model that we created of the building that has been proposed, and the street wall at the street line is not 60 feet. It's much shorter than that on both sides. And it does not, while the street wall does extend the entire length of the street line, it doesn't go up 60 feet. And height factors buildings like this can get really tall when you place them in the middle of a lot and it has lots of open space. You can still do height factor buildings with less open space, but they can't be so tall. It's the nature of it. It's this trade-off between open space and height. So DCP was at your meeting and commented on our findings during the meeting. And they said the following, which I transcribed from your meeting YouTube. For anyone watching the video in the future, I do think George's example of 14th Street is a really good one. It shows how housing opportunity pushes away from height factor, the old 1961 zoning. If you can't do height factor, if you can't do the tall building, that's a further disadvantage of condo. So away from height factor and towards contextual. And so when you're thinking about how this proposal might affect Community District 2, think of 8 West 14th Street, because that's the type of thing we're trying to push toward. His reference to condo was the discussion of the UAP, using affordable housing, is something you wouldn't do in a condo, but you might do in a rental. And the idea that a contextual building, a shorter building, is more attractive to rentals is what he's referring to there. That was part of the larger discussion. Okay, so the plain meaning of the zoning text and DCP's affirmation of its plain meaning makes me feel pretty confident in our zoning challenge. I'm confident about it, but I will say that I'm not confident about how the applicant will redesign the building to address the issues. Will they follow the intent of the new zoning? Or will they look for another loophole to try to keep the building's design as they have designed it? Right now, the plans are still in objections at the Department of Buildings, meaning they have a zoning approval, but the full building plans have not been approved. And in recent years, what I've observed is that the Department of Buildings does not typically accept the zoning challenges when they agree. It used to be that when they agreed with it, they would accept it and they say, I partially agree with it, and then they work with the applicants. Instead, they hold on to it and work with the applicant to try to correct the issues before answering the challenge. And when the issues are corrected and the applicant files a new ZD1, DUB will either reject the challenge as being unnecessary because the issues have been rejected, or just not answer it because the new ZD1 moots the challenge. So I'm not necessarily expecting an answer soon, but I do think behind the scenes, the Department of Buildings is working with the applicant to try to develop a compliant building. And, let me just say this, is that zoning is complicated. I'm the first person to say that zoning is complicated. And when you amend 1,386 pages of zoning text, as we just did with the city of Yes, we're going to see misunderstandings and disagreements, right? And I'm going to say that this is normal, right? We've just done a massive zoning change. We have a disagreement over how it works. And I think we're going to see a lot more of these disagreements as the requirements of the city of Yes become more apparent when it is tested on actual sites in the real world. You know, we're going to encounter things that no one ever thought of. And, you know, for much of the past year, DCP has been busily correcting the many, many errors that were introduced in the new zoning. And again, you know, when such extensive changes to this very complex system are made in a short period of time, errors should be expected. But how are the corrections being made? And this is, I want to spend a little time talking about the correction process. So the Department of City Planning has corrected about 200 sections of the zoning resolution, and all of these corrections are related to the city of Yes. There's a listing of them, the ones that they've at least made since March 2025 on the right. Administrative corrections, changes to the zoning resolution made by DCP. DCP decides there is an error in the zoning text, and then they change the zoning text to correct the error. And I will be the first to say that most of these are tiny changes. Cross references are wrong, section numbers are wrong, truly minor errors. But some aren't. And I found an error. Personally, I found an error, and I want to talk about that experience just to kind of put it in the record so you understand what's been happening. So, as a part of my review of the charter revision ballot proposals, I wanted to know if it could be possible for rezonings that go through e-ULURP, the expedited ULURP, to happen without mandatory inclusionary housing being mapped. And I remembered that the City of Yes ULURP text included a requirement that R11 and R12 districts must only be mapped in MIH districts, mandatory inclusionary housing districts. I needed to find that reference, but I couldn't find it anywhere. And I was like, have I misremembered? The reference was nowhere to be found in the zoning resolution online on the website. So I went back to the text that was referred out to the community boards to see if it was there. And yes, the text I remembered was in the zoning that was referred to the community boards. It was right here. R11, R11A, and R12 districts may only be mapped in mandatory inclusionary housing areas. It was there. And so I was like, well, did city council take it out? No, it was in the version that was approved by city council, right? It's right there. It's there. During the city planning commission, they added this line after it, but the sentence I was looking for was there. But it was still missing in the version of the zoning text that I found online in September of 2025. It was just deleted. It should have been right there where the arrow is pointing. Did they fail? You know, I was thinking, well, what happened? Did they just fail to put it in after council adopted the text? Like, was it like a technical failure when they were updating the site? And you know, thankfully, what I did shortly after the new zoning was adopted, I downloaded a complete copy of the zoning resolution and I saved it locally. And that change was in the version that DCP was distributing online on December 13th after the zoning had been adopted and amended and was now being pushed out there. So it was deleted after it was amended. To be clear,
Get a life.
to be to be clear, this isn't some random sentence, right? Before this sentence, the mapping of mandatory inclusionary housing areas was entirely internal DCP policy. Requirements for MIH areas and when they're mapped are not in the zoning resolution. They are not described by a DCP rule. It's a DCP policy, which they have applied consistently, but policies can change without a public process. This is the first time it was in the zoning resolution that declaratively states that certain zoning districts must be in MIH areas, and suddenly it went missing. I contacted people at city council and I said, hey, you know, the zoning resolution is changing. And after they independently verified that the missing text was actually missing and what they approved, they contacted DCP. And after some back and forth, DCP said the deleted text was an error, and they were sorry, and they put it back in, and it can be found online today. And it's certainly possible that the text was deleted in error. But the deletion was never marked as an administrative correction. It just disappeared. And at minimum, I find it a very concerning error. And, you know, it asks the questions, well, what safeguards has DCP put in place to prevent such errors from reoccurring? I don't know that there are any. Because, you know, DCP shouldn't be able to delete whole sentences from the zoning resolution, or can they? I mean, as it turns out, had the sentence been marked as an administrative correction, I think DCP could have just deleted the sentence. Such a change wouldn't have been in the spirit of an administrative correction, but I think it would have been possible because there is no oversight on how the corrections DCP is making, right? I mean, no one is looking over their shoulders and asking them questions or approving the changes. And while most of the changes are tiny, there have been consequential administrative changes. And we know that because the Department of Buildings had to issue this construction advisory. They put this out in October, and it's going to read a portion of the DOB's construction advisory. Due to the high volume of changes, applicants are strongly advised to review the zoning text carefully and check for the black squares right here, even after the permit is issued. So the way it works in the zoning resolution now is that if there has been text that has been corrected, it is marked with this little black square. It was last amended on 12/5/2024, but it was corrected after that. And the Department of Buildings explains why this matters. Unlike zoning text amendments that provide vesting opportunities of the old zoning text, filing subject to administrative corrections may receive new zoning objections at any point, even after DOB permit issuance and prior to the issuance of a final certificate of occupancy. So that means they can go ahead, dig a foundation, build a building, and if there is an administrative correction before they have their final certificate of occupancy, there could be a zoning violation on it that they have to correct. So, how does this relate to 5 West 13th Street? Both the plain reading of the zoning text and DCP's public declarations at your meeting support the finding that DOB zoning approval is not legal under the new zoning. Should the applicant find a loophole and obtain a DOB approval for a materially similar building, I think that DCP should immediately issue an administrative correction to address the loophole. DCP could not have been clearer on the zoning's intent. So if they need to correct a loophole found by this developer, they should do it as a normal part of the process. If they do, the developer cannot rely upon a DOB approval based upon the corrected text. An administrative correction, should it prove necessary, would be evidence that DCP meant what they said during your meeting on how the zoning's supposed to work. And then finally, this is the last thing I'm going to say, is, and really this is a kind of rhetorical question for all of us to think about, shouldn't there be some oversight? It seems like a mistake to let DCP identify what's an error and then make the change to the zoning resolution without any oversight. You know, we spend all of this time, your committee, me personally, I've served with all these other boards during ULURP, reviewing and arguing over words and their meaning, important words in the zoning that shape the city of the future. And during that process, and after that process, after that process is done and it's adopted as law, DCP decides that some of those words are a mistake and they can just change them without anybody else's approval. It just seems wrong. And this, you know, you may have a different opinion about this and I may be wrong, but just yesterday, DCP sent a notice out that another 19 sections of the zoning resolution were corrected a full year after the City of Yes passed. We know the sections that were corrected, the section numbers of the zoning, but we don't know the substance or the reason for the corrections unless we go back to an old version and compare it with the new version to tease out what has been changed. And to reiterate, mistakes and corrections, I think, are a normal part of the process. But should corrections to zoning be made without oversight or explanation? Anyway, that's all I have for you. I'm happy to get into details of any of these if you want to get into that.
Thank you, George. I think that's been very helpful, and I also appreciate the additional insight about the corrections that DCP has been making to City of Yes. One question on the City of Yes corrections. You know, have you talked about this with, you know, perhaps the land use people at City Council? You know, what has been kind of the reaction to other people you've spoken to about this?
Well, okay, yes. So yeah, when I found the missing text, I contacted City Council because I was still tracking it down, like what is going on, and they helped me identify the, you know, this as being a problem, and they took it to DCP and made certain that they changed it, but they were also saying, you know, they're not really well suited to manage the zoning resolution themselves, right? You know, the zoning resolution is a law, right? And it is approved by council, but they don't have the technology that DCP has to do this, and they don't regularly do any oversight of this. It would make sense, Eugene, for this to be a collaborative exercise between DCP and City Council, but it's not. I can't explain why it's not, but it's not.
Thank you. If we could go, and if there are people that have questions, you know, let's go around the room on
I
the
know.
zoning challenge.
Well, I have first the committee, sorry. So George, to go back to 13th, 14th Street.
Yes.
Are we to understand that there's really, you don't have any sense of a timeline on how long it'll be before we know, before you know, what happened with the objection that you filed?
Okay, so I can tell you what's happened in the past, which we can try, maybe carry forward to the future. So the Department of Building says that they need at least 75 days to answer a zoning challenge. I had and they routinely take much longer than that. A couple of years ago, I had a zoning challenge take 13 months before they answered it. 13 months. And, part of that is this change of them working with the applicant to try to get an approvable building before they answer it. And sometimes that takes a long time, and it deals with the applicant and the applicant's timeline. So I don't know the answer to that. It could be tomorrow, it could be in a year.
Just to follow up, was that 75, that more, that past objection, was it, in your opinion, as complicated as the one that you have on?
It was definitely more complicated. This one is actually not all that complicated as far as zoning objections go. It's, the other two issues that I challenged are not complicated at all. And the City of Yes zoning changes, I think, are pretty straightforward. The plain text is on our side, so it's not a very complicated one. It's just whether if they are trying to find an approvable building similar to what the applicant wants to do, that may be a complicated task.
Eugene, Anita has her hand up.
Oh, Anita?
Yes. Hi there. This was so interesting, really presented well and easy to understand. Thank you for that. To me, it's so interesting how the biggest difference between what they propose and what the code allows is a big difference in how we perceive our city, how we use it, how we live in it. These big open plazas or whatever the tower in the sky is an old idea. And it's really not very current, contemporary, because we really want to have interaction along the street and have a connection to the street. So this is a real throwback to so I would hope that they would change it and modify the massing so that you get back to that quality of life and the relationship of the street to the building, rather than these, I call them it's like a compass everywhere. We're going to have all these compasses that show you where the sun is shining. And that's it, instead of a whole nother information.
If I can respond to that, the City of Yes is, while it kept the height factor as an option, it is openly hostile to it. The street wall if you're in a commercial district, you have to have your building, especially if it's a wide street, at the street line up to the minimum base height. They don't want this Department of City Planning adopted zoning or road zoning that is really hostile to the tower in the plaza sort of building form. And I think they would agree with you. They would agree with everything you said. And they've taken actions to do that. It's just that this building, we are in disagreement, doesn't follow those actions.
I have a question. The City of Yes was supposed to simplify things, supposed to make it cheaper to build. Did I understand you to say that a building's design had to keep track with all the changes, and that it wasn't just a case of when you break ground what the rules are, but that as you go along building the building, if they change the rules, you have to modify your design? Or was that my mistake?
No, that is what the
Crazy.
DOB's construction advisory says. This is like, I've talked to some attorneys about this, and they're like, holy cow, this is very, that's what it says. It says, unlike zoning text amendments that provide vesting opportunities of old zoning text, Filing subject to administrative corrections may receive new zoning objections at any point, even after DOB permit issuance and prior to the issuance of the final certificate of occupancy. So if you've gotten a final C of O, well, then you're okay. But that means you're not okay before that? You could have your TCO? And I mean, this is like, this
It's
makes
all
you
written
like,
by lawyers.
oh my
It's all
God.
Lawyers. It has nothing to do with building or practical. It's just everybody's covering it for themselves.
This is like, this is just, when you match this guidance with changes to over 200 sections of the zoning resolution, wow, that's very concerning.
Yep.
I have one more question, then usually we can go to the public, I think. George, have you shared this whole issue with the DCP and the changes with any other community boards? Because you're in such contact with people all over the city.
So this is the first time I've talked about it with any community board. I've talked about it with counterparts at city council. I've mentioned it to one person I know at DCP who said, mistakes happen. So I haven't, listen, I'm just a planner, right? I'm just a guy who works in this stuff. I'm not a policy person, right? And so I don't really know how to bring this to the attention to the powers that be, right? I work with community boards. If you think that this is an issue, it's why I wanted to bring it to you all, right? To get it in the record, and maybe you all have an idea of this is something that can be addressed. That's not what I do, right? It's not my strength.
Okay, that's
Well,
right.
is there anything that you found that makes you question whether this building should have been as of right or not?
Well, yes. I mean, that's
Yeah, that's it. I know, but it's a challenge
yes.
now.
So it's the street. It all has to do with this, and part of this is a little wonky, and I acknowledge that, is that, again, it's this trade-off between open space and height, right? And what counts as residential open space. And the street wall requirements in the zoning, I think, are pretty clear, is that you have to have a building at the street line or near the street line on 13th Street. And it's going to be much more difficult to call that building open space. There are some conditions where you can call the top of a building open space, but it's limited. And this building is not that, right? It doesn't match up with the new zoning. Now there were options that the developer could have used the old zoning for a year, right? They could have done the height factor building under the old zoning, for sure. But then you wouldn't be able to get other city of yes advantages, like what we call quality housing deductions in a height factor building. You can't do that under the old zoning. But you could do it under the new zoning. Anyway, I believe that this is, they say it's as of right, but I think it's not legal under the new zoning. And again, I think this zoning text explains why it's not legal.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that people have been doing this for a long time. Zoning has to be a living, breathing thing because we're always learning new things. We're always changing or improving or clarifying. I used to call it the city of yes, the rom-com of zoning. There was so much that isn't addressed in it and that are going to be issues, no question about it. So if the system is designed that it can adapt and adjust and be corrected and improved and clarified, you can only be judged on what you knew at the time of getting the building permit. That's only real, that's only practical. So even though they say that, I think that's just, every lawyer's got to put their hold harmless agreement on top of something, so nobody can go after them. But step it up. I don't know how you regulate it. I guess you have to have an outside agency that's their job, is to track all this information and issue it really clearly as to why changes are made.
Yeah, and that's really my major complaint about the whole errors thing, is that DCP decides what's an error, DCP makes the change, and doesn't track changes on what's happening. They just mention the section that's changed, right? That's
Not everybody does as much work as you did to track it down and prove that in fact it was approved, because there are so many versions of everything, that time, at that point, it was in there.
so, and if I can say, what struck me about that when I was like tracking that down is that this is no one's job. Right. Essentially, I stumbled into something completely accidentally,
Yeah.
based upon, my memory of having to learn this stuff for the community boards. And I found out it's no one's job to track this stuff and approve it. And, there's no oversight. And that's just wild to me.
I mean, everybody needs that. It's no offense to anything. It's just the
And
way
we
it
do
should
have
be.
people in the public, but Sean has.
Two things. I'm not familiar with what a height factor building is, if you could define that. But
Oh, sure.
secondly, also, it seems like maybe this should be a law. Maybe it's bring it to someone at the city council to sponsor, either an administrative agency to check it, or
Or a
it seems like it
process.
should be embedded in law. That
Yeah,
is oversight.
I mean, listen, I'm going to say, okay, I'll take the second one first. DCP has been issuing corrections to zoning, for many, many, many years. And if you go on to the earlier pages of all of the corrected zonings, they would do one this year and maybe two the next year and maybe none for the next 5 years, right? It was very occasional. And, so, okay, they would occasionally find something and they would have to fix it. And then suddenly City of Yes passes and they've done 200 in the past year, 200 sections and more corrections within those sections. And so, maybe it wasn't necessary before and now it is. Regarding what is a height factor building. So height factor buildings are also called sky exposure plane buildings. These are buildings where the amount of FAR it has, amount of floor area it has, the floor area ratio, and the height of the building is not fixed. It is related to the form of the building. And effectively, the way it works is that the more open space you have, the larger and taller the building can be. There is this equation that you put in there. And so like if you look at, there's a lot of like housing estates were built on a height factor model, sometimes before height factor, but like the R72 height factor district was modeled after Stuyvesant Town. Moderate sized to tall apartment houses with lots of open space, right? And the ideal R72 apartment house is Stuyvesant Town. It was it was built from that project, and but effectively the way it is that you could build tall and skinny with lots of open space. You could max out your FAR that way, but you could also do short and squat and cover most of the lot. But you'd have to build a smaller building. But when you think about height factor, think about housing projects, housing estates. That's the kind of form that they encourage. And it was mapped. Most of the city was or most of Manhattan was height factor in 1961, and really since 1961 we've been getting rid of it. Right? It's been contextual zoning and has been replacing it over and over and over again. And so we don't have we still have a lot of it left, but it's getting less and less every year. And City of Yes is kind of hostile to it because it has these other rules which make using the height factor rules, which they've left in place, more difficult.
Okay, we do have, Monica's had her hand up for a very long time, and then we'll get to you.
Just a quick, easy question. Can we just get a copy of this
I
presentation?
will send it in. I've been noodling it up until 5 minutes before this started.
Thank you, George.
Okay, Monica, maybe you should, I think you have to cut closer here so the people on,
Yeah, if you could move closer
Fine,
to the
and the-
microphone.
recording can hear you.
Sit here, you can, sit.
Oh, no, that's
I'll
okay.
stand for a second.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet. Can everyone on Zoom hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Okay, hi, I'm Monica. I'm representing Councilmember Epstein. I'm really excited to be attending these board meetings and be in this committee. And I would love to elevate this request that the DCP needs more oversight, and also this idea of introducing and sponsoring a city council bills that would sponsor administrative oversight. So the questions that I have for the board are, what would you like oversight to look like? How would you feel most comfortable for this to happen? Do you want the community board to play a role? Like what would you like it to look like so that I can elevate this to the council?
I don't think we have an immediate answer to that, but I think so. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for volunteering, and we'll try to develop something. We'll decide what we'd like to do and what would be the elements, and we'd have to talk to other community
You
boards.
can email it to me at any time. Yeah.
We just have to take action, decide what, as a committee, we want to do.
Yeah,
So we haven't
exactly.
even gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, but we're,
So it's
we're,
great that you're asking that, because that helps, gives us
Yeah.
direction, knowing that you.
yeah.
That you're listening.
Of course. That's my job. I'm here to
It's an important
listen.
issue.
Of course.
Thank
So
you.
my understanding is you all will confer, develop a plan, and then reach out to me, or even just it doesn't have to be a comprehensive plan. I completely understand what you were saying, George, that like this is something that's a little policy heavy, but just solely on intuitively what you would like oversight to look like, and then we can flesh it out. Our office can flesh it out as well.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine. We'd have to develop something in the committee and send it to our board, and then it would come to you, if the full board.
Yeah.
We'd have to vote with the full board, and then it goes around. So, but I really appreciate
Yeah, of
what you
course.
just said.
That was all. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for your patience. Now, are there are people online with their hands up too?
Yeah, there's Andrew and somebody else was there.
Do you see any?
And if we could take the time just to elevate them, if they want to be elevated, that'd be great.
I don't know. I thought there was more than one, but it's fine. Hi, good evening, Andrew.
Hi.
Again.
Yes, long time no see.
Yeah.
Shall I go ahead?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you to the committee for holding a hearing on this. Thank you, of course, to George for all of his incredibly hard work on this. As I think the committee and probably many members of the public know, we also filed something with the Department of Buildings, basically just echoing everything that George said and did and put together. We've been working closely with the neighbors who hired George to do the work on this. And certainly it's our hope that the result is that the Department of Buildings will come back and say that this building does not conform with the zoning and must be changed. A couple of things that I just want to point out. As per the other recent meeting of the committee where we discussed the Soho, NoHo rezoning, unfortunately, it's not at all uncommon for city planning to make representations at public meetings about what zoning will or won't do, or how it will or won't take effect in the real world, that completely contradicts the way that it actually works. And once that happens, they typically have nothing to say about it and don't object to it and don't try to change it so that it fits with what they said during the process. If this can be the case where we finally get them to do that, I think that would be wonderful. It's unfortunately not unprecedented or unusual for that to be a very big problem with the Department of City Planning. And I don't want to speak for anybody, but my understanding is there have been conversations between elected officials and Dan Garodnick specifically about this application and this site. And the City Planning Commission chair, the response, as was relayed to me, was this is what the zoning allows. Now, that does not necessarily mean at the end of the day that that's where we're going to land for a whole host of reasons, including the fact that ultimately it's the Department of Buildings, and who the chair of the Department of City Planning is may well change. But we should all just, I think, have our eyes open that in many ways, this is a steep climb, as incredibly well argued as George's challenge is. If we lived in a world where a well-argued and accurate zoning challenge ultimately was the only thing that determined outcomes, this would be a very, very different city. But I, of course, believe we should put everything we can behind making that happen, and to look at ways to institute a greater oversight, because this is an ongoing problem with the city, where they tell us one thing, it's very different in reality, and then they do nothing about it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Can I comment on that?
Sure, George.
Yeah, okay. So the one thing that we have here, Andrew, is you know, the author, the person that said this was the primary author of this zoning, and we have them on at your meeting on the record saying that what we showed them in terms of massing is how it's supposed to work. And I don't disagree with you from a substantive standpoint on how things have happened in the past, but we have good evidence here to better evidence, let's say better evidence in terms of we had the massing, we had this site. Like, it's just amazing that it all came together so that we have like the perfect evidence that the that the zoning as it was interpreted by the DOB in that zoning approval isn't right.
Sure. Yeah, I generally approach things preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I think that's probably the main difference in terms of how we're looking at this. That's all.
Fair, very fair.
Okay, thank you both. Now, I'm sorry. The setup of this room means that the person has to turn around and figure it out. Monica spoken, and Rohit, you have something to say?
Sure.
I'm sorry. You're fine. Okay. I don't need to ignore anyone. We have a question from the past. Oh,
All right, I can come here and project.
yeah, it's important.
That's okay, you don't have to get up. That's quite all right. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here. I live on 37 West 12th Street, and the back entrance to the building is on the same block as this proposed outrageous structure. You know, a short preamble, and I promise I'll ask my question. So I had just merely my apartment renovated in the last year and a half. And even though the 13th Street site is not under landmarks, they held up an application for 6 weeks for my internal renovation to make sure that a compressor that I was putting, an HVAC compressor on the 13th floor, wasn't visible from 13th Street down there. Look, I'm all for preserving the look and feel of the city. And I feel like that was a very high bar. This feels like the pendulum swung wildly the other way. So that's one thing. The second thing I heard George say, that affordable housing was part of this City of Yes spirit. 36 luxury condos in a 538-foot tall condominium doesn't quite sound like anything affordable, right? So there's that. I mean, the real question I have for you, maybe George and Andrew, since you guys are the experts on this, is let's go with Andrew and say, plan for the worst, let's say DOB, DCP, whoever it is, the powers to be turn a blind eye to your objections, is there a fallback legal recourse beyond that, or is that just the final decree? So,
Okay,
I can take that. So there is a process, right? So if the Department of Buildings rejects our zoning challenge, and they keep this building the way it is, we can appeal to the Board of Standards and Appeals. That's what the A in the BSA stands for, is that they hear any objection to a building department decision, either by applicants or opponents. And then they will rule on what the zoning actually means. And that is called a final determination. And if you do not like the BSA's final determination, that can be appealed to a judge. As a matter of law, zoning is a law. And if there is a judge will interpret the BSA's interpretation of how the zoning is supposed to work. If that's the case, I still feel we have a very, very strong argument because of this zoning text you see on the screen. This zoning text, the plain language of it is that, you know, the building needs to come up to the minimum base height at the street line, and it doesn't. You know, it's very clearly not it. It's what their solution, what they come back with. That's really the question, right? What comes after this? I don't know if they're going to really, find another loophole to have something similar, or if they're going to come back with something materially different. So it's not over. Let me just, there are other steps that can happen after this.
thank you. Anita has one more.
Yeah, is this the Cohen, Patterson and Fox building? Do you
The
know?
architect,
Yeah. Because they're very big.
It is.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I don't pay attention to that stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, they're very experienced, international, established firm that largely work north of 14th Street. And they're bringing it, this is what they do. So for them to bend, it will be difficult, perhaps. And maybe that's why it's so important that early on, the modification has to happen. Otherwise, it'll just be repeated everywhere. And it's not a good life for those living in the neighborhood. It's not the ideal, and it's not the intent of the zoning, more importantly.
That's right.
And the zoning doesn't always favor some niceties, and this is one of them, and we should definitely hold on to it because it's going to shape our city. It's enormous. It's enormous. So I would say we have to fight all the way if we can.
Okay, thank you.
A landmark decision.
Eugene, while
Yes, Katie.
Andrew is still here, could we give a brief update on yesterday? I am really, that was quite, we had quite a day, because I actually have a question for Andrew about something he said yesterday.
Could you tell us what yesterday was about?
Sure. Yesterday, Katie and I, we both attended the BSA meeting specifically to give testimony on the proposed building at 52 Little West 12th Street. And I did get the address right, correct?
51.
51. Is it 51? Okay, 51 Little West 12th.
Yes.
Which is the one right in front of the Standard Hotel and next to the High Line. And they used the community board resolution as the chairperson used that kind of as a framework for the discussion during the review session. And then, they found that their opinion was that on all of the uniqueness factors, and if you recall, there were 5 uniqueness factors that they were claiming. The only one that they thought had merit was the small lot size. They thought that that was a unique condition, but that all the other conditions that they were claiming were not really unique and a unique hardship for them. Katie, did you want to go ahead and, I guess, give the other part of the update to the committee?
Yeah, I just want to say that the chair was very stern with the applicant to come back in February or March and don't talk about subsoil conditions and don't talk about groundwater, which they were trying to say, oh, we can get another study. No, she just, I think what I heard, and Andrew can confirm, it was really about a use change. And I think that they were open to having a small residential building there. But we were able to say, I was able to say, you know, because they said, oh, there's no commercial viability. And I said, well, wait a minute, you've got Rolex, Hermes, Louis Vuitton. What do you mean there's no high return commercial option there? So that was a little bit of silence, which I thought was happy that we landed a point. And then they did not want to have any comparables about a hotel. And they said, no, it's a special permit only, that's off the table. But Andrew said something that was very helpful, but I didn't catch all the detail. And I would appreciate it if you would say what you thought the workaround is on the hotel, getting them to use the hotel comp.
Well, my argument in terms of the hotel was the standard for a variance is supposed to be that it's the minimum variance necessary in order to allow for the reasonable return. And my argument was, given that hotel uses had until very recently been allowed as of right, and now were by special permit as opposed to strictly forbidden, as opposed to just not allowed by the zoning, that it would seem to me as though a hotel use, if one were to look at a variance in terms of allowable uses, should be the first use that is considered, and only if that was found to not meet the reasonable return standard should you look at other uses. I would concur with what Katie said. You never know what could change between now and the next hearing, but they were basically saying, we're not interested in allowing you any additional FAR, and the only variance we are open to would be for use. And they were even more specific, Eugene, I would say, than the size of the lot. It was specifically about the narrowness of the lot, because they said
right,
the
the
depth.
narrow lot, you're right.
Right, the depth was not unusual. Now, I would say a 25-foot wide lot is not unique for Manhattan at all. In fact, it's a standard size, and that was part of what we put in there. Their argument was and is that for commercial and manufacturing development, a 25-foot wide lot is constraining because of circulation and other things, which I think can be argued. But that was the sort of connection between the 25-foot narrowness of the lot and the allowable as of right uses that they were saying they could buy that argument.
Yes, and all of our reflections come after 6.5 hours on the Zoom, first for the public review, for the commission's review, the board's review, and then public comment. And our friend and neighbor, Zach Weinstein, was there in the room for the entire time. Andrew and Eugene and I were on Zoom, but we'll give Zach a medal. So thank you. And we may discuss that more in the committee, but I just, before you left, Andrew, I wanted to get your input on that. So George, we probably will be discussing, are you going to stay, or do you want to?
If you'd like me to stay, I can't. Oh, you mean you're discussing the BSA item? Okay.
No, we will continue. We'll do more on West 13th Street as well, I'm sure. But
Yeah,
so do you want to stay?
If you'd like me to stay, I can stay. Otherwise, or I can go. It's up
Letting
to
you
you.
know. Here, welcome
Make
to our.
sure there's no other questions from the public before we move on to the business session.
Right.
So if there are other questions or in the room, now's the time to raise your hand or make yourself known. Otherwise, I would suggest that we move this to the business session where we can have a further discussion on the, what we've heard today from George, and also the additional information he's given us about how DCP manages corrections to the zoning text. Okay.
As a note, I just want to say that even during business session, the committee can ask questions of others.
Yes.
So it may be helpful to have George stay with us just for at least for a few minutes. If people on the committee have some questions procedurally.
Right, and I think George has indicated he can stay for some time, so that's great. Katie, do you want to run the business session since you're in the room and you can see most everybody?
Okay, yes, of course, Eugene. Okay, so when we were planning this agenda, Eugene and I didn't know whether we would want to write a resolution or not, as we've been listening to George. I've been personally feeling, well, maybe there is a resolution here. How do other committee members feel?
On what specifically?
On, well, one thing, this oversight problem, that's really jumping out. I don't know, we don't really have anything in front of us specifically on West 13th Street. I don't think that we have.
This ties into something that we discussed, as far as the district needs, which was having a place to go and ask about problems and challenges, because we were seeing more of these issues and that there was no where to go.
Yeah.
And nobody at the agencies that would help as far as if there were questions within as of right.
This is an example of that.
And this is an example, but I think it's also concerning some of the issues that we heard tonight, and it's beyond this project, but it also involves this project. So it's almost if we had a position, or if we were to have a resolution that is two parts. Right, one is concern for the site, the other is concern for the issues that the site is raising. And then maybe a third part, which is, the fact, just the issues that the city's working with the applicants for the sites to correct these problems without ruling on them. And as a result, you have no guidance. You just, on the rules, right? Other agencies often give a response. So you have test cases, you understand where things fit and where they don't. Now, I don't know, George, if you think that that's, important or not, but if you don't have any feedback on what was wrong, everything becomes Wild West.
Useless, yeah.
And then with that, construction advisory is even more concerning, because you have no interpretation, and that's not helpful because that adds tremendous costs onto projects which was the exact opposite of what this is trying to do, which is streamline costs.
Well, I think your third point ties into transparency, right? I mean, I think it's a part of what you're saying. I mean, we don't have anyone to talk to, so we don't know what's going on, so we're in the dark.
And then we also look back at, trying to involve more developers who aren't experienced in this process, and this doesn't help, into that process at all. And so that's a fourth point, and that, as we heard, was something that just came up with Gansworth.
Okay.
And so you start tying all these issues together, and
Go ahead.
There's a lot of lawsuits. That's what it's setting up. There's a lot of money for lawyers here. Because nobody is gonna go tear down their building and rebuild it after they built it. It's silly, It's just silly. It's not gonna happen. They're gonna be in court, maybe for generations. And, so who cares after that? That's really what this is to me, because it's such a clear misunderstanding where they have to move forward, and DCP has made mistakes, and as anybody would. This is a normal thing. This is these are such complicated, dry documents. You need really professional people who know how to track this kind of information. There's nothing here for amateurs.
And I think the number one thing that stood out to me from this was the DCP section changes that are not being, there's no oversight on. And I would have expected the land use committee from the city council to have regular oversight hearings on these changes, given that they're so numerous.
It should be somebody independent, because one thing I think our speaker is so delicate in presenting, oops, we lost this. Now, yes, clearly we could lose a sentence when you're dealing with a big document. Or maybe somebody somewhere realized that is really a good thing to get rid of while we can.
Yeah.
And that's not, that's New York City, money, real estate, come on,
I mean,
I think it's a silly, not to.
I think that the example that George came up with and presented to us about that particular sentence about R11 and R12 and MIH, that sentence being deleted seems like such an egregious error. It goes far beyond what an administrative correction should be, right? I mean, this isn't a misplaced comma or, a hyphen. I mean, we're talking a wholesale deletion with no record of what the previous sentence was, right? And no record of why they thought it was worthy of deletion, right? I mean, the fact that George had to wade through several versions of the document to find out where we lost that sentence is very concerning.
Because there's a lot of money involved in that one sentence.
Look at this building,
One
yeah.
thing though, we have a representative from our new city council member here, and one of the things is any type of legislation is just to publish the changes as a list. I mean, look, every document these days you can track changes on.
Yeah.
It's very clear, and that way people can just see what the changes are. It's very straightforward.
Choice not to do
There's no mystery. Everybody here, just even stuff that everybody sends around, the track changes is on. There's no reason that can't be done.
And also with a simple
Very-
explanation, it doesn't have to be so confusing
But even
with that, yeah.
absent
Yeah.
explanation, just
Right.
the fact that you have what was before and what is
Yeah.
after, whatever the date was, just whatever it is that changed, because you have the matching advisory that goes with it that says you're responsible for them. You can't even find it or know what it was before.
Yeah, changes.
I mean, that's
Physical.
This was a big thing he uncovered as far as so early on. Thank goodness, because, again, once it's gone.
But I think we also, there's two things. One, there's obviously mistakes that have, to some people, egregious consequences. But the other part is, look, there's simple corrections of stuff that's just, little stuff. So you can't, I don't want to over complicate that process, but everybody should even see what those are.
Exactly, if it's instead of
Yeah.
or comma instead of a
A
semicolon.
typo, tons of
And
stuff.
what Anita said earlier is like if this building, which is what you see uptown or in the past, gets built, it's the gateway for more and more of these. And so that's why it's really extra disturbing and frightening.
And doesn't continue the intent
Yeah.
of the zoning law. That is
Right.
the intent, not to go back, not to make it the most economical, quick tower, no matter what it's built out of, but that it's the ideology of city planning, of how the city lives and breathes and interacts, and, that it's not the intent to build a tower with this weird, it
Yeah.
breaks the whole city feeling. The grid is, so many things.
And this is an example where we have DCP, when they attended our meeting in June or July, I forget the exact month, but when they attended our meeting, they gave the intent of what this should be, right? They presented this specific lot as an example of
Yeah.
how it would unfold under City of Yes.
Let me, I'm sorry,
Or
let me
yeah.
clarify, is that I presented this lot
Right.
and they reaffirmed my presentation of it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And we asked you to present it because we knew it was, sort of in a pipeline. But I think, George, one of the things that we cannot lose sight of is that, and Ro talked about this, is that the building as proposed is a very tall building with very expensive apartments for very few people. It is not addressing our housing crisis
Not at
because
all.
these are not people who need new houses. They already have many houses, probably. The building that should be there is probably, I think you said to us in a couple of days ago, probably a rental building, which will serve many more people.
That's right.
And that is exactly the philosophy of the City of Yes and the
Right.
philosophy of this committee.
Yeah.
House more people and house more people who need housing, who are having a hard time getting it.
And another part also is to create transparency in the development process. So that people know what the rules are, so that is actually the way you expedite housing production, is by clarity.
Yeah.
So that when people put together plans, and a part of that is understanding the process of resolution of objections. And when there are challenges, that you have a clear response of what, if it was a not totally unreasonable reading of something, why it was wrong. But if you don't share that, other people are going to come along with the same issue. And that is not helpful in the broader scheme of things of, shovel in the ground to finish projects. And I think that that's really important. And especially on these large projects, because that's what we see in this community, and, having that a long timeline, in this case, they've already knocked the building down. There's nothing going on.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like no use. I feel that whole part of it really is something that should be made more clear. And the other issue is just bringing more developers into the mix, right? And if you have these behind closed doors meetings, there's only a few people who end up finding out what the problem was.
So you get this developed.
Yeah.
And to work around stuff and figuring out loopholes and.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I just want to, I just want to make sure that it's clear to the committee. I don't know if it was really mentioned, but the building that is going up, I mean, the proposed building that is coming up, my understanding is that the apartments that will be there are all floor through units, right? The entire floor, is that
It's
correct?
36 apartments and 30 floors is what I had heard.
Okay,
That is correct.
so pretty close.
And 500 feet, 30 floors. Oh, they're tall floor. Oh, there's
There's some
there
voids.
are two voids.
Mechanical space.
Yeah, there are two
Yeah.
mechanical floors that are 24 feet tall each, 24 foot.
24. Oh, they really pushed the tower up.
And the apartment floors are either 12 or 16 per floor, one or the other.
Wow.
Well, it's a model we see all the time, and it's not one that is wanted or needed, but that's neither here nor there. At least follow the zoning.
Yeah, for sure.
But the zoning would put you,
The zoning, you need to know what it is.
I know, I agree. And the clearer, especially because it is all new. Look, these things are so complicated. I really am amazed that it's come this far with this new resolution. But this is going to happen constantly for years, if not forever. And even in the old zoning, they issue clarifications and changes because life changes, energy changes, or safety changes, and there's just, it changes part of what it has to do. So this would be a good time to get that all set up so that it's not going to be in the court for years and it becomes, sort of, we're just not going to pay attention because we'll just fight it out in court after the building's built and we've made our money and,
And then this is the first one, and it's
yeah,
so egregious.
exactly. It's so perfect. It's a perfect example. I'm so grateful that it's come to light in such a clear way.
Okay, so I'm hearing that we want to do a resolution. I thought we were getting a Christmas vacation.
Katie.
I have a question, do a resolution, but do we want to take any more commentary on some of the issues with respect to it? I'm just throwing that out there because this just came up. If we want to write part of this to be a little bit more guidance document on any other actions that we want to see our electeds taking, because that might help clarify some more.
Give me a concrete example of what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, testimony from other groups about what they, would like to see.
Or inviting anybody to a January meeting,
I just bring that up, it's because it's,
like
you know,
DCP.
Like what?
well,
DCP probably wouldn't
I'm
talk
just
about
thinking
it.
the public
because-
advocate.
I don't think, it's an issue under review, right?
DOB was invited, but they're the ones who are reviewing, so.
What did they say? What was their
I
reason for
don't,
not?
I don't think we ever got an answer from
There was
DOB.
no, I believe there was no response, but I see Mark can give us
DOB
a.
acknowledged the receipt of the invitation, said that they were going to refer it to the supervisor, and we've not heard since then. So they acknowledged receipt of the invitation, but no substantive
I
response.
think we need to set up I agree, it would be good. Why not? I like that. But it also has to be a system that is going to be automatic. I mean, each building, especially early on, it's setting up a system where it will be reviewed and where it does have to follow the code. And if they're not clear about it, this is the time when those big things come out early on, because will cost a little more or whatever. So,
Well, who would do the review? And because we know that DCP did a review, not adequate according to the people who are objecting. And now DOB is reviewing. Who else could review, do you think?
the project,
Yeah, you said to set up a review system.
I'm talking about for all changes. Because I mean, this is just one of, it'll just be, that's part of it.
You don't, oh,
The
so the
change
oversight.
that it has to go to the code as it now
So you're talking
exists.
about the oversight,
The changes from what
oversight.
is
change. Okay,
being,
yeah, got it.
what needs to be modified and that it be also
Yeah.
known with those modifications. You can't just drop a whole section, If you want to make a change because it's not practical, then that's something to discuss.
But if you have a tracked version of changes,
Yeah.
somebody in a window where it could be, challenged or called
Yes.
out.
Usually what
or-
they do.
That's an
That's one,
explanation.
that's a good
Yeah,
solution.
I mean,
I
that's a
gotta get
very,
that.
nobody's trying to, look, stuff happens,
I mean, if
But
some
the
point did
consequence of
that
a
they didn't
change
do that. I
may
mean, they
only be a-
intentionally didn't.
but, well, whatever, I don't want to talk
Somebody
so
could
much
have
about
avoided it.
No, no,
intention.
you're right, you're right.
Because a lot of people, but the
Right.
consequence of one change may not be meaningful to 99%.
Yeah.
Of people, but that 1%, it's a huge change. And if they want to bring that issue to light about what that impact is, because that impact could be anywhere, right? Wherever the text
Well, those
applies.
people who
And that
know.
small, well, but what I'm saying is that it may not be apparent to anybody until that one,
Right.
percent of whoever looks at it and says this impacts this and it's an unintended consequence of that. And if you don't have an opportunity to raise that, then
So do we want to look at something in draft and then work on it for January more than, get a little more time to digest and?
the
This is
issue
a-
is that I think that George had raised, he had seen some things. But I think we may want to just leave this open for a minute of some other examples of
Yeah.
where there were some issues so that we can maybe have a better guidance document to start a conversation
And do we want to, so I
we
heard,
also have, other council members that have a little bit more land use focus that, perhaps we might want to utilize some of their experience.
Yes.
And ask them as well. I mean, generally, any bills are co-sponsored, right? So.
yeah, and we are talking about the site, but we're also talking about the wider citywide issues that everybody, everybody's.
And this, I think that George just, what his challenge lays out, is a perfect scenario in which to comment on and then have because it originated from our.
Yes, it's amazing.
So,
Well, I just really hope, and this is why we have to be so forceful about it, is it could become acceptable.
Right.
And there's stranger things have happened,
Yeah,
and that's not really, if you're not held to what is good about the zoning part, then
although we're thinking of putting the larger issues off, would it make sense to say something about the discrete issues sooner, since it's under review right now? That's my question.
Well, to me, it felt like it's under review and we don't have a response yet. Isn't that what we're waiting for from the DOE?
we don't have a response. We're not.
You're not gonna
We're not.
respond.
nobody's gonna respond to us.
So I think that what George had pointed out is something important, right? Which is if there's a new filing, it's moot. So, and that seems to be the manner in which they're reviewing these. So it becomes a moot point, there's nothing to weigh in on. The larger part is this is an example commentary on the process.
Okay, that's fine.
Not the underlying project. That doesn't seem to be, something else I would try.
And it may, from what George said, there may be other levels of objection.
Right.
Right.
There may be.
I think it makes sense to focus this resolution and the committee's attention on that process and what we see as the deficits in the process, rather than this specific building and the specific application, particularly since this is not a building that, has come to us as a part of a regular application, right? It was proposed as an as-of-right development. And I think just to be on the safe side, we should focus our efforts. We can certainly reference, I think, the zoning challenge. I don't think necessarily that should be the focus of this committee's resolution.
Okay, that's good. But Valerie had her hand up. She hasn't spoken. I just want to make sure.
I know I came in late, so I apologize if this was covered. Did you guys discuss the idea that if there's an appeal and it does get referred to us? Is that what you were saying, that it's moved or?
No, we don't know. We don't think an appeal will be referred to us, but there's this challenge, then there's an appeal to the Board of Standards and Appeals, and then there's an appeal to a judge.
Those are 3 steps.
Okay.
There are more steps ahead.
Okay, thank you.
If the neighbors are
That was the
dissatisfied.
answer to the neighbor who came, with the question about the building. Is there anything that could be done? And George said those are the 3 steps.
But we had also heard that the city could work with the applicant and then they file a new.
And that's why you were
Plan,
saying that that's
and then
not
it's
public and then you don't know.
Yeah, but then it's moot.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, Arthur.
Did you have a question? I saw that.
I just wanted to just, thank you. I just
Okay,
wanted to-
come close. You gotta-
The people can't hear you
Yeah.
on Zoom.
I just wanted to make sure that this is getting distilled down to like 2 separate issues. First, it's like the oversight of DCP and the process. And then the second is and forgive me, if this is incorrect, this is my first interaction with zoning at all. So I'm trying to keep up. But the second issue is about doing an appeals process, because even though the challenge was 3-pronged, it went forward. Am I correct? And now you want
We
to,
don't
like,
know.
You don't know?
The challenge has been submitted to the Department of Buildings,
Okay.
and on the Department of Buildings website, it says in objection. That's it. It's objection. The status is objection. So that's all we know. And that is a little bit part of this whole transparency issue that we might,
Okay.
there are examples from this building that, for different, the oversight issue, the transparency issue, the lack of communication, that this building is sort of
It like
giving us some.
encompasses like a broader issue of lack of
Yeah,
transparency.
there are
Yes.
some
Okay.
broader issues and this will support them.
But it also,
I appreciate the question. I just want to reiterate that business session is primarily for board members to discuss.
yeah, but Eugene, just as a point of information, she was asked a direct question by a committee member.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see an open-ended, I didn't see a direct question, sorry.
So the other issue here, and I'm just gonna, because in another meeting before this committee, DCP has come forward and said that many aspects of what they do, they consider to be the gold standard. And I'm just gonna bring that up because this doesn't seem like such a gold standard case. And what we want to do is hold them to that because, I think that those commentaries that they've made, with respect to the site and George's presentation are important to.
I'm not going to write down goals. I'm sorry. But thank you for reminding us. Okay, so these are all very, this is really a much bigger topic or in the night.
It's a very big topic.
Than we started out with, but I think we've gotten some good stuff.
And very timely, and
Yes.
really, it'd be good if we all just grab onto that bone and make it into something,
Yeah.
because
I think that-
otherwise, it somehow things just mush through, and they're big issues, small issues. It's
I know.
somebody put a lot of money into designing this building, into analyzing it, zoning. Lots of experts went into this, lawyers. These are not little overnight things, so there's a lot at stake.
So I have a direct question for George. Your client with the challenge, is that a deep pocket company or is that like a residential neighbor?
I was asked to do this by a residential neighbor.
So do you feel they have the resources to take it up the line?
I don't know.
You don't know, you
I
said?
don't know. I don't know.
Okay,
Okay.
but our politicians, anybody who represents the people of New York should, because that's what the law is. That's why they initiated. It needs to be held, especially something so volumetric. It has a big impact. One thing is whether it's a store or a residence, blah, 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 but the scale and the impact on the neighborhood is
Well, it should be a
enormous.
matter of interpretation.
Well,
Should be what the zoning law is.
it has to be.
There's always gonna be interpretation,
There's-
but
there
there's
is
no
not
about a
clarity
street
on the
But at least there should be
interpretation.
a framework.
Because
that
when the
is the zoning.
interpretation happens behind closed doors, it does not set, this is how all laws are, right? You court decisions and small what challenges, and he comes out with what the precedent is. But in this case, none of that is transparent. And therefore you have no insight into what the interpretation is. And this allows for a different interpretation every time. Because it happens behind closed doors, and then that's left to the politics, which is people are appointed, ultimately role.
Interpretation is not all that loosey-goosey either. That's what George said. This is not what this section says.
Well, we have A and Z.
But
We don't have A and Z. We have
But
A
George
and Z.
also said another part
Yeah.
that's important is that if you don't make a ruling on that and you allow somebody else to continue to work on the application and to potentially, look at some other options where there is a looser interpretation because there is some opaqueness or, loopholes or whatever, that's the problem.
That's
because
why
it's a-
consultants get a lot of money to do this.
I don't, am I phrasing what you said correctly, George? I think that's what, yeah.
Okay, I think I understand the
So we're gonna bring
committee's
some more
direction.
parties into this for January?
I was thinking we should bring in the council member for the district, Eric, And
Is it?
No, I think it's harder, that's why they're here.
That's why it is hard.
sorry, though.
It's 6 and 5, yeah.
Yeah,
They
you know,
changed the
the lines have been,
When you see a 14 teacher, they get fuzzy.
well, maybe we all do.
I'm on 14. I have vouchers.
We also in January.
You live north?
No, I'm on
an
the south side.
opportunity to take perhaps advantage of a whole new land use division from the borough
Yeah.
president's office. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of, there's
And,
a lot
and
of
the,
opportunities.
and the public
here
advocate.
With some, you know, that they may want to participate in the discussion.
And there'll be
or,
a new Department of City Planning.
You know, but just. and
Sounds
it's-
like there's a lot of merits to taking this in continuing this discussion in January and passing a resolution after that meeting.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard to ask for something when we don't,
What's available?
we need a little more guidance.
Well, and
It's just new, guys.
And the reality is, if when this resolution would actually get sent out after full board, it probably wouldn't get sent till after the new year anyways.
Well, I don't think we should definitely sleep on this, because there's a lot of ways to draw attention to it.
And if we could get draft language potentially for the January meeting, that would also be nice.
And you know, George was going to send us the slide deck so that we can all sort of, you know, dig into it a little more.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But just thank you, George, for really making the street wall argument very clear. I absorbed that, sorry. And I'm also new to zoning, so I really appreciate that. That was very clear.
Great.
Okay,
Wonderful.
super.
Great. So thank you, George, so much
Thank
for
you.
Yes,
presenting
thank
your
you.
zoning challenge
Oh,
and also the other incidental
thank you for
items.
asking me to do this. This is a story I've wanted to tell. And this
You're
is
a good
the first time-
detective.
and this is the first time I've told it in this level of detail. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And
Very
I'm glad we're
great,
able
yes.
to, in essence, bring this home, since
Right.
a lot of that conversation did start here in this committee.
That's right.
I asked that question.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
Bye now.
Okay.
Are we done?
Wait a
Councilmember
minute,
Epstein's
Eugene,
office.
do we have one more
Yes.
item that is there anything else that we wanted to mention briefly?
For new business, or do you want to report
Yeah,
to the
new business.
committee?
At the last meeting, I mentioned the community benefit from Gansevoort. Has that gone anywhere?
I'm not really here to report on that this evening, so
Well,
Well, you're not ready to report on that?
I don't have anything to
Okay.
report on that, so there's nothing to report.
I mean, this is something that's going on and on, that's just, it's a shame.
Well, thank you.
It would be good if we could get going with that next
Yeah.
year, because
Yeah.
it's.
Okay, then
Good point.
Okay,
The other thing would be the St. Luke's thing. I think you should brief the committee on what is happening there.
Okay, yes, we've received a couple of emails in the last couple months about St. Luke's. We received one today or yesterday, as they say, after 6.5 hours of that hearing. I don't know what day it is, but anyway, there is a website, www.garden.org.
It's westvillagegarden.com.
Okay, thank you. There's a neighborhood group that has done something very similar to what George has done. Is a neighborhood group that has analyzed the entire St. Luke's block, the new building, and they have concluded that the new building cannot be built because the open space has been eaten up by this private garden and the 100 Barrow Street access. And Landmarks has approved this building over our community board objections. This group,
LPC.
yeah, the city, the citywide commission has approved it. So now now this group is asking us to weigh in. I don't know how we weigh in, but they apparently are talking to Eric Botcher to try to stop the building on the basis that there is no more space on that
Open
lot.
space ratio.
Yeah. Yeah, OSR. They keep saying OSR.
Yeah.
And they would not object to the originally planned social house, which burned down when the church burned down those many years ago and was never replaced. although that also violates the OSR, but since it was up there before,
Was it smaller?
yes, and it's not on the street, it's it's inside the garden. So I don't know how we weigh in or how.
Or if,
Yeah, we just are figuring this out.
Wouldn't somebody have to come to us rather than us?
Well, they could come and present, I guess.
Yeah, why not?
Well, here's the way, before the website happened, they reached, Eric, the Councilmember Botcher reached out and called Mark directly about this. And the person who raised it, there was no report or anything by a licensed professional. It was just someone saying, I read this and so who says who? And so it was happening in tandem with receiving this report from George James regarding this. And so this is not for us. We are not the enforcement mechanism here. However, we can be a forum. And that's why we had this discussion at exec about bringing this to have the forum, to invite DOB, to invite the developers representative, to have George present. So it is as of right.
But for St. Luke's, we haven't made a decision about a forum.
Have not made a decision on that. So we just there's nothing same thing with this one. It wasn't referred to us. These are both as of right, and this is a trend we're going to continue to see emerge. And so I thought it was important for Eugene and Katie to brief on kind of what is out there.
Yeah, and so, we can circulate the website later because it's public and you can read it.
The website is in the chat, but yes, it's westvillagegarden.com. Welcome everyone to take a look at it.
Do we know if they've submitted something formally to DOB or?
They do not want to do that.
How do we know that?
Because of the email that we got today from them with this link. They don't want to do that because then they think it will harm the school if they do.
I guess how do you affect an action then? What is it that they want to happen?
They want to talk to the church and they want to convince the church to build the social hall.
Okay.
we should talk to the church.
Actually, no, the email says that they are.
Wait a minute, I'm just going from memory. Eugene has it in front of him.
Yeah, no, the email specifically says, and I'm quoting, there's a group of community members fully separate from the school that are prepared to fund and file a zoning challenge through DOB and if necessary, appeal to BSA or beyond.
Okay, well, that's exactly.
Okay, so then it's, yeah.
So does that mean that we'd like to invite them in January?
Can we wait until there's a zoning challenge?
I think otherwise, who are you sending it to if you were to respond on it?
Yeah, we can't preempt the zoning challenge when there hasn't been one. Otherwise, we would be the one raising this to DOB, and that seems inappropriate for this committee to do.
Okay, that's good. That's a good answer. Mark, do you have any?
Just that, the bottom of the letter was trying to solicit the community board and the council member, I think, to be some kind of facilitator of a conversation with the church.
I agree.
And the church and perhaps the school as well. So it's a nuance, but but you're.
But there's also, I believe, more than one agenda about that building, objections to that building.
But it's been approved by OPC.
Right, but there's still people who don't want that use in that, near the school. So we get drawn into that too.
Yeah. Oh,
The use of the building?
I believe so.
yeah, there is
Their
that.
property. I mean, they also always had one there, didn't they? A clinic? Right on that kind of.
In the social hall, because there was no building in the corner.
Yeah, no, I got it.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
a feisty one, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I just want to go back to that email again, right? It seems like it's nuanced, right? They want to help guide the church toward a path that avoids a major zoning dispute. but at the same time, they're saying they're prepared to mount the challenge.
Yes, that's exactly how I read it.
I mean, I asked them specifically if they wanted to have conversations and they weren't interested. So I think that.
And when you say they, you mean Mother Stacy directly?
The church didn't
Yeah.
seem interested in engaging further on issues, and so they've
Seemed
put
pretty much like
themselves
they
in a,
wouldn't.
you know, in that position where they're not interested in having discussion.
They're not negotiating, they're building.
Yeah.
These things do have to move along too because of the incredible expense and effort and, you know, it's not easy just to stop the train.
It sounds like they were not interested in coming back to the community board based on Carter's direct invitation at full board when they were testifying. But it also sounds like they are open to having conversations directly with people about meeting individually. So I guess it sounds like we should submit that.
Okay. Okay, so it is 8:19. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, any second?
Second.
I can say third. Well, just, I just want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season.
Happy holidays.